Hello and welcome to another episode of Releasing Your Inner Dragon with Drake and Marie. I am Marie. I have a YouTube channel that's all about fantasy world building, and I'm a fantasy author. And with me today is my co-host, Drake.
Hello, I am Drake, Maxwell Alexander Drake. Everyone calls me Drake. Award-winning novelist. I've written in pretty much every medium. I teach all over the world. That's me.
Today, we are going to talk about how to make a magic system that feels organic and real within your world. We're going to discuss some of the finer points of how you make that feel like a part of your plot and a thematic element of your world. Drake, do you want to start us off with what are your thoughts, your first thoughts of building a magic system?
I think where I see a lot of mistakes in people making magic systems is they forget what the end game is. We're not building a role-playing game. We're building a novel. We're building a story. Now, maybe you are building a role-playing game and you can extrapolate whatever you want. But when you're writing a novel, the magic system is there to enhance the story for the reader. It's either there to enhance the plot, it's there to become a tool to use as like an overcome, sort of like Star Wars with the Force, or it's just there as window dressing, sort of like the Lord of the Rings. Like, how does magic work in the Lord of the Rings? Nobody knows, but it also doesn't do anything. Like, it really, the characters never use it to defeat anything. It's always them having to do that on their own.
And when it is used to defeat something, like, for example, Gandalf does technically, I guess, defeat the Balrog with it when they fall into the depths. But you don't see that. It's not shown.
It's really just a rescue from without moment. The characters are running, we're going to die. Gandalf shows up and destroys the bridge and falls with him. And, you get the famous line, "Run, you fools."
Flee, you fools.
That's a rescue from without. That's someone else saving us. And yeah, that someone else is using magic. We don't understand it. But it's not like Frodo is using magic to save the world. We define the ring a little bit. And so there is a few times where he puts the ring on to kind of help escape something or whatever, because we just know it turns you invisible. But we don't know, like, can you turn invisible and then go slit a bunch of people's throats? We don't know that. And so he never uses it for that. Matter of fact, the one time that he does use it in the movie, because unfortunately the movies have overridden the books, because I've watched the movies since then, when they're in that destroyed kind of place, when they're on their way to Rivendell,
the Nazguls, the
Nazguls attack, and he's like, "Oh, I can do this. I can put my ring on," and it actually totally backfires on him because he doesn't understand the ring. We don't understand the ring, and it actually puts them more in his, or it puts Frodo more in their existing realm or whatever it is. So
I think that was in the book as well.
I think so. Like I said, it's just the movies have overridden those memories, and it's really hard to keep them separate now, since I haven't read the book in 10 years probably.
That's because every time you open the book, you remember that Tom Bombadil is in it.
Zing!
Sorry to all Tom Bombadil fans.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that's where I feel like a lot of people make a mistake, where it's like they just fall in love, and it's exactly everything about the world building stuff. Like we talked about, when you fall in love with your scenery too much, you become a tour guide narrator. It's the same thing. You have to think about the fact that magic is there to enhance the story. It's not there to be a cool magic system that we're going to role play or anything like that. And so I think that's where I feel like a lot of people don't start in the right spot.
The thing for me, and I actually recently did a video on this, which is on my channel, specifically where I zeroed in on elemental magic. And with something like elemental magic, especially, because that comes with a lot of baggage, right? Elemental magic systems are common. There's a lot of them. If you don't have a strong thematic element to your magic system, and you're using something like elemental magic, your magic system is just going to blend in with the rest. Mm-hmm. It's just going to drift in the whole sea of elemental magic.
And define what you mean by elemental magic for those that might not know.
Sorry. By elemental magic, I'm talking here primarily about the classical 4+1. So fire, earth, air, water, and void, and the power of friendship, and unicorn farts.
Spirit, or whatever.
Void, whatever.
It's funny because yes, one of the things about when you introduce elemental magic, and magic works off the 4 base elements: wind, fire, earth, and water. Every time you introduce that, your readers are going to roll their eyes because they've seen it so many times. And just to throw it out there, because I got to at least throw in one call to the TV show that may never get made, and you guys may never see it, even though I've written a bunch of stuff on it. It is one of the things that I love about Fiend Folly, because at the beginning, where they're like, I don't understand magic, and they're like, what do you mean? Magic comes from the 4 base elements: fame, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And so I play off of the trope that we're going to have 4 base elements, but the 4 base elements, because remember, what is the thematic elements that I'm playing with in Fiend Folly is all about social culture, our social culture. So a magic system that gets its power from fame, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, like, it opens up so many doors for me to play with. I mean, season 1, the villain is a fame mage, which means he gets his power from being famous. And that's just me picking on the fact that, like, you have the Kardashians. Why are they famous? Well, they're famous because they're famous. Wait, what? What does that even mean? And there's nothing more magical than that to me.
Yeah.
So it just allows me to pick on a lot of social things here in a fantasy world.
But that is exactly what I mean by a magic system that has a thematic component. And I think that quite often people invent a magic system that is completely unrelated to their theme. It's unrelated to perhaps even is unrelated to their world. And if I can pause a moment to pick on D&D worlds in no way, and by D&D I mean Dungeons and Dragons, in no way, shape, or form think through their magic system. Because how do you have a faux medieval world when every cleric can cure disease and injuries and
bring back the dead?
Bring back the dead at the higher levels. Okay, that's at the higher levels. But like a level 1 cleric, which you get by spitting wrong, because honestly, it's level 1, can already cast cure spells.
Mm-hmm.
How are people sick? How do they have short lifespans? How does any of that happen? Mages, or clerics even can purify water. So you've got none of the water problems. You just don't.
Because every village would have a first level cleric.
Yeah.
So in D&D's defense, I'll play the other side of that argument. It's not a novel, it's a game. And with game, we want to be able to play with rules and have fun and have balance. I mean, it's one of the reasons why mages are set up the way they are. It's stupid. It's unlogical that they actually have these stupid limitations, but a first level mage has got to be about the same playability and power as a first level fighter. And so, yeah.
I got no problem with that. Mm-hmm. My problem is that the campaign worlds don't take magic into consideration at all. It's like the campaign world and the actual magic system is entirely divorced from each other.
Yep.
The only campaign world which, in my opinion, does it right is Eberron, which is a campaign world where they have steampunkified them into the gas technology era using magic. So they've got like ships powered by elementals that fly. Yes, exactly.
That's why in the realm of the Dying Sun, the big project that I'm working on, there are 7 races and all of them have unique magic. There's no crossover between. Elves have their own form of magic, and so on and so forth. And the elves' magic is combat magic. They're the only ones that can cast lightning bolts and fireballs and everything like that. Well, guess what? They're also the only ones in charge, because you got sticks and stones and I got nuclear bombs. Like, what are you going to do? And so the entire culture and the entire society has been built off the fact that elves literally have nuclear weapons and everyone else is using sticks and stones. And so it'd be completely illogical to have, whatever, the humans be this massive powerhouse, because what is their magic? Growing stuff. Like they can really do a great job of making a bunch of corn.
Which, to be fair, is an amazing thing for your civilization.
It is. You got to have it.
But it kind of sucks when you have a militaristic war like, race with nukes right on your border.
Luckily, this world doesn't exist like that. One of the things that I'm really excited to explore and hope that fans really enjoy, because this does tie into magic systems. So the entire world were won 1,000 years ago when this big war happened, and almost everybody was killed. I mean, there was whatever. The elves were the most. There was I think, if I remember correctly, there was about 500,000 elves left alive at the end of the war. But like humans, I think there was only about 100,000, and so on and so forth. And so I think there was less than 50,000 of the little hobbits, which we call fees. So after that war ended, and they, basically saved their world from this thing, everybody's just intermixed. And so there is no it's the only fantasy that I've ever seen where there's no kingdoms. There's no human kingdom, there's no dwarven kingdom, there's no elven kingdom. There's just the kingdom. It's called the Empire. And yes, the elves are in charge. Yes, the elves are the rulers. Yes, the elves are the peacekeepers and everything like that. But it's because they have combat magic. But there is no war between the races. I mean, that's the one weird thing about this. And it's added some really cool things that I've really enjoyed playing with so far. But it's also added some weird things like, well, there is no elf human war that's going on because humans just live within the Empire. They literally are just a part of it, and they're the ones who supply a lot of the food because their magic is based off of that. The ogres, which we call the ogre, their magic is all based in healing. So there's an ogre healer in every freaking village because there's a doctor in every freaking village. And so, in our world. And so the magic has dictated kind of like how they spread out, what their jobs were, how they interact with society. The dwarves' magic is based off of items, like all these different things of how they interact and how they become citizens. But there's still different races. So we do have some racial tensions. We do have this, we do have that. But there's no kingdom versus kingdom. There's no elven kingdom that's strictly elves, and so on and so forth. So it's really interesting, in my opinion, and it's been fun to play with because I haven't seen it anywhere else. But a lot of it stems from the magic. Each magic is very different, and so approaching it with, logically, what would these guys be doing? We know that almost everybody was killed 1,000 years ago. It's only been 1,000 years. They're having to rebuild society. They each have this little specialized magic thing that they do. How would they use that? How would they rebuild their society? How would they integrate with each other? Because there is no one place. Everybody's just everywhere. And so the magic when I was world building, the magic was hugely impactful on every aspect of what I was doing.
And that to me is kind of the key thing that I look for. If you're going to have magic that's intrinsically part of the setting. So in Lord of the Rings, it didn't matter. Okay? The only place where it mattered was in Mordor, because Sauron is the freaking eye, right? So, so you've got a different setup. You've got Sauron sitting there watching the whole world. But everywhere else, magic was in touches. So maybe the tree in Minas Tirith did something, maybe it didn't, who knows, but it didn't fundamentally impact the city. And because it doesn't fundamentally impact the city, you don't have to worry about it. Now, the elves have got access to magic, but that's why everything about them is also built differently. Right? If you look at Rivendell, it's described in magical terms. If you look at elvish equipment, like the cloaks that hide you, even the food, lembas, that can, last for days and do all of this, like lift you up and so on. All of that stuff is intrinsically part of the elven race, and it is described, it is shown, you do get to see it, and because of that, it is part of their world. But for the rest of the world, it doesn't matter because magic is so rare.
Right.
So one of the big things that you've got to do is decide, is it rare or is it not? Because if it's not, then your magic has to impact everything else.
I call it the Walmart principle. Like, if you ever want to see how ingenious people are, just Google, and I can't remember the exact term that I would Google for this, but it's like, you'll see them carrying they have a little Yugo, and they're carrying an entire bedroom suite of furniture back to their house, somehow strapped to this freaking little Yugo. And you know, we use things in ways that just you would never think of. So for me, when I'm world building, it's always about extrapolation. So if magic can do this, so necessity is the mother of invention. We have air conditioning. Actually, let me take a step back. We have Freon because we needed to cool ourselves when we lived in our houses. So we went down the path and we figured out that this Freon stuff could extract heat from air and turn it into cold and transfer energy and so on and so forth. And so that's what we do. If I could do that magically, the world would never have Freon, ever. Why would they? There's no need. And so, you know, the extrapolation part of it is what I constantly think about. So I love going down the path of the chandler. A lot of people don't know what a chandler is. A chandler was one of the most powerful people back in the before modern age. They were rich, they were respected, and they kept their secrets of chandlers to themselves, and they didn't let it go out. They were candle makers. That's it. That's all they were. But they were that powerful because they were the only ones that could light your house after the sun went down. But then the incandescent light bulb was made, or actually, really, kerosene came out first. And the chandlers kind of were like, yeah, I'm not going to pay your prices for that. I can just get this little lamp with oil in it and burn it. And then the incandescent light bulb came out, and, you know, kerosene went away. And now we have the fluorescent bulbs and the LED bulbs. And I don't even know when the last time I even saw an incandescent bulb. So technology moves forward and kind of makes things obsolete.
I don't think you'd see an incandescent bulb these days. They're not really safe.
Well, they're also just not, no one wants to buy them, so it's stupid to manufacture them.
Yeah, they can explode.
You know, that's what I think of when I'm thinking about like magic in the world. If I could do this, what would I do with it? How would I use it? And it's the reason why in Genesis they had cold boxes. You know, in their kitchens they had a box that you opened a door and it was perpetually cold inside. It's not plugged into anything. It's literally just a box that a mage made permanently cold. And rich people who can afford it will have them in their kitchens. Not everyone has in their kitchens. And how I limit things in that world is through economy. You know, it is a very capitalist driven economy. And so mages are like, yeah, I'll make you a cold box. You're going to pay for it because, you know, I'm the only one that can make it. And so you're going to pay me. And so that's kind of how I limited things, was through money. And money is a great limiter as well.
I limited my actual magic system. So my magic system is extremely limited. It's the mage can affect his own body. So he can make his own body stronger and he can heal his own body and so on. But to move that power outside your body, to affect something outside your body, that is both rare and requires an enormous output of power. So because of that, magic is, while it's common for there to be mages who can affect their internal bodies to use hobby, the external magic is very rare.
Yeah, it was the thing. You know, I loved what Sanderson did with the magic in the Mistborn series, where, you know, you basically ate metal shavings, which seems really weird. And then when it was in your stomach, you could burn it as a magical, you know, magical ability. But the thing he did to limit it is, I think there was, how many of, I don't remember, it's been too long, but there was 7, 8, 12 different types of magic. And each one of them came from, like, if you burn tin, this would happen. If you burned copper, this would happen. If you burned steel, this would happen. But even though there was not a huge amount of mage, it was still a very small percentage. They all could only do one. You could burn tin and do whatever it could do, but you could not, if you ate anything else, you were just eating metal. Like, there was no benefit to you. And then the Mistborns were the ones that could burn everything. So they could eat everything and have access to all the different powers. And they were very rare.
And I think, like, it is worth emphasizing that even though Mistborns are rare, even Mistborns were limited in that they were limited to which metals they had access to.
Let's save that for a second, because that's going to come into play a little later in our discussion. But definitely that fits in with the last part of this. What I wanted to segue into is kind of what we were talking about with because we went through world building, extrapolation, and like understanding that if you have magic, it's going to affect everything. And the big things that society always wants is protection, food production, and communication, and really travel, if you want to say that. So those are the things that I'm always thinking about okay, can my magic system make travel much more, expeditious? Because that is something society is going to push for constantly. Can it make me more food? Can it store my food better? Can it allow me to talk to somebody that's not next to me? Can it protect me and hurt my enemies? That's always a given. Almost everybody's like, oh yeah, I'm going to blow your face off with a fireball. Okay, great. But what does that mean for the military? How do battles happen if I can just cast a fireball and blow up 400 people at one time? How does that change things? And that's something that I don't think, I think maybe the system that might have come close was, and I hate giving props to this IP, but Game of Thrones, because you had one family that controlled dragons that could literally just melt half your army with one pass of the dragon.
And skipping the TV series, which while there were some moments with the dragons, especially like the Field of Fire was really well done in season 4 or 5, but in the history from A Song of Ice and Fire, the entire way in which the kingdom was established was dude, I forget his name, the first Targaryen king, came from Dragon Glass Island. Sorry, it's been a while since I've read the books, and I haven't watched the new show because I'm not sure.
I watched the pilot of the new show. I'm actually pretty excited about it.
Oh, okay, cool. So, because I've been like, I'm not sure I trust you people after what you did to me. But just to sort of get back to the magic discussion around it. So, when the very first Targaryen king came, and he established King's Landing and so on, he didn't have an army. Like, he was outnumbered by 3 dragons to tens of thousands. But those 3 dragons counted for everything.
Yep.
And later people did work out, or kind of tried, maybe they thought they worked out ways to counter the dragons, but really they didn't.
Right.
Because it was 3 fucking dragons. Sorry,
well,
it was 3 dragons.
And that was the thing that I think they did really good in this new TV series, because the reason why they're so hard on secession, like we need a male heir, we need to do so, who's going to be in charge, we have to keep the hold of this. There's a line in there where they're like, look, the only reason why us Targaryens are in power is because we control the dragons, period. There's no other reason. And so I really love that they were very, very, because if you have nuclear weapons, the reason why you are where you're at is because you have nuclear weapons.
And no one else does. Yeah.
Right. If you're the only ones, then you're sitting even more pretty. Especially if you're willing to use said nuclear weapons. Because that is also a great deterrent.
Because the Targaryens showed, like, right from the outset, they didn't burn many armies, but you don't have to. You only have to burn the first couple. Really? And then everybody else surrenders.
after you've slaughtered a few million people, your point's made.
Yeah.
So, there's not really much you have to do after that. But yeah, that's how the magic, and their magic, they don't have magic users and healers and all this other stuff. They have dragons. That's the magic. There's the White Walkers and all that, and we get into all that. But anyway, just to simplify it, we can just say
they have dragons.
They have dragons. And that's their magic. And so how does that shape the world? How does that shape policy and political and religion and everything else? And so I think that's the thing that we're talking about. When you're thinking about your magic system and world building, think about it realistically. Think about how it actually would affect things.
And thematically, I do have to give Martin props for this, because if you take dragons as his primary magic, which they are, especially in the earlier work, his core mages, the Targaryen family, are very draconic in that they don't really care about you. They're in charge, and they're not afraid to use it.
And that's why you're right. I will give them props for that, because remember, they have no dragons. They have none. They had dragons, and they built up massive armies and massive respect, and then the dragons were gone. And now, because the reason why Ned Stark and the first king before Joffrey took over, Joffrey's what he thought
Robert,
but they thought that Joffrey was his father. They went out and did it the old-fashioned way. People were uprising. You don't have any dragons anymore. Yeah, but now we have more armies than you have, and so they use that. which is why it was so dynamic for what's her name to hatch 3 dragons
Exactly.
and have that ability to come back.
So I will give him props there that his magic, his core magic, tied exceptionally well into the thematic elements he was playing with.
Agreed.
You know, and I mean, they were not good people, his mages, by and large. But he was writing very much, you know, it's a grim, dark world. It's very much a crapsack world. The people in charge are not nice people. Look at that for an example of really how to delve into that, thematically tying your magic to your world and its impact, even if it's limited, its impact on your world.
And just extrapolate. If I can do this, where would it take me in communication, food production and storage, military, and travel? Those are the things that drive inventions. Those are the things that humanity has always tried to improve, always looking for an edge, always looking to improve. I think I said improve twice, but maybe it's because we want to improve improvement. And that's what like I said, that's what I think about when I'm creating my magic systems. But that leads us kind of the second level of this. Maybe I stole this from Brandon Sanderson. Maybe I made it up myself, but somewhere in there, Brandon Sanderson has a quote that says, an author's ability to solve a conflict with magic is directly proportional to how well the reader understands said magic. And so for me, what I think that I look at is magic is on a sliding scale from ambiguous on one side all the way up to heavily defined on the other side. And then, you know, somewhere in between. So as an example, just to get everybody on board, Lord of the Rings would be ambiguous. How does Lord of the Rings magic work? Nobody knows, because they never define it. What does magic in Lord of the Rings solve? Nothing. It doesn't solve anything. It has a few little things, like here's some food that you can eat when you're on your travel. Here's a thing that you'll blend into the woods. You know, okay, Gandalf blows up a bridge and takes the Balrog with him, but that's more of a rescue from without. It's not, you know, the players are the players. The characters would have just died without it. You know, he's the Han Solo saving Luke Skywalker so that Luke Skywalker can do the actual overcome. Semi-defined is more like Harry Potter, where we know kind of how magic works, but we don't know every single detail. I mean, they say a magic word, they wave a wand in a certain way, okay, but we don't know all the rules. But magic can do some things, but it still can't solve the end plot. So the example I always like to use is Chamber of Secrets. In Chamber of Secrets, Harry gets locked down there with the basilisk. He has his wand's gone, so he can't use magic. Magic does help him out a little bit. Magic gives him that kind of, you know, the phoenix flies in, drops the sorting hat pukes out the Gryffindor sword, and then you're on your own, kid. That's all magic's going to do for you.
Even in the more direct solution, like in the which one is it? Not Chamber of Secrets, Goblet of Fire.
Goblet of Fire,
where he's facing off against the dragon. He can't use magic against the dragon directly, because we know he's not that powerful, right? It's like dragons and all the rest of that. But it can summon his broom. And his broom is then the overcome, because we know he's got a flying ability. We know how the broom works. It's basically dodge.
We have defined the broom, and that's where it comes to the defined side of magic. When you define it to the level where it's a tool, then it doesn't make the reader feel like you're cheating. So when he uses his magic broom to do what he does in the Goblets of Fire, no one feels. We've already seen him use that magic broom in a very, very almost.
We've seen it since book 1, where he took the broom, and it's the game of Quidditch, and the whole thing has been there throughout, you know.
And it's just become a tool. It's like riding a horse or, you know, driving a motorcycle. There's nothing magical about it at that point, even though it's a flying broom. So yeah, and the one that I like to use for the defined side is Mistborn. Because Mistborn, you learn that magic system to the T, and you know every little detail about it, how it works, when it works, why it works, what you have to do to get it to work, what you have to do to get it not to work, how to use it in different ways. That's also another great example of the extrapolation. So in the beginning of that, you find out that it's actually code in the law that at the top of every building, they have metal spikes that stick out. Like, they're not for protection, obviously, because there's only one every 6 feet or whatever. But it's law, and nobody knows why, and you don't know why. until you learn the magic system. And then you realize one form of magic is they can push off of metal. And if you could push off of metal and you have the entire city lined with these metal rods, you can fly across the city by just pushing off this one, pushing off the next one, pushing off the next one, pushing off the next one. And once you learn that, you're like, oh, yeah. And so extrapolation, the world has changed laws to make it, because the ruling class are the only ones that control the people who have magic. And so they want their people to be able to go across city really fast with no one seeing them. They make laws that facilitate that. And so extrapolation.
Yep.
We need to ask, what would this actually do to my world? How would this change my world? How would it affect my world? And so not only is that, you know, the 4 things I talked about, not only are those metal rods helping with combat, with, you know, fighting each other, it's also transportation and maybe even communication, because I need to get this message across town. Go do this now. So, yeah, so that's the scale. You go from ambiguous to defined, and depending on how much closer to the defined side you get is how much you can use the items as tools. And the broom is a great example. I've never even thought about that one, but that one is probably better than my Chamber of Secrets one. But yeah, it's defined at that point, and so we can use it.
I'm also an aficionado of Sanderson's laws of magic. I guess one of the ones that we did touch on earlier is limitations. And he specifically says limitations are what people remember more.
When I'm making a magic system, I actually have 4 categories that I drop the magic in, and I don't always use the 4th one. Matter of fact, I don't know if I've even ever used the 4th one because it's a little tougher. But to not start with limitations is abilities. So I always figure out abilities. What can the magic do? You know, because those are the cool things. Those are the things that you have fun creating. Oh, magic can do this and magic can do that, and so on and so forth. But though you're right, those are not the things that people really remember. And also, if they're too overpowered, then the character doesn't earn what they get. That's why I'm not a Superman fan. He's invulnerable and gorgeous and strongest and fastest, and like, okay, great. What does he have to struggle? You know, I'm definitely rooting for Batman in the Batman versus Superman fight, because that guy's got nothing.
The things you remember from Superman is when he's, you know, had kryptonite applied and he's suffering through.
Actually, the thing I remember is he stands there with his chest out as they unload the clip at him, and then they throw the gun at him, and he's like, you throw the gun at me. It's like, wait, I just shot you 8 times in the face and you didn't flinch, and you're going to dodge the gun? I realize that's because the actor can't actually take the gun to the face and the bullets are fake. So after abilities, after I figure out what I need the magic system to do to be able to drive the story that I'm telling, that's where I really start honing in on limitations. And limitations are what the magic cannot do, period. Like, one limitation is in every single one of my magic systems, every one of them. You cannot bring someone back from the dead. Because death is, in my opinion, the strongest plot device that you can use in a story. By eliminating that, it makes everything just weak. Sort of like one of my first meetings with Sony, when we were still working out what I was going to do and everything like that. They were like, all right, well, how are you going to handle regeneration? Like, what do you mean? So, well, in the game, if you die, you re-res, you come at one of these res spots. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen in the stories. They're like, yeah, no, you need to incorporate. I'm like, no, I'm not. Nope. In the fiction side of it, if a character dies, they're dead. Period. Because I'm not going to lose that plot device. It's such a powerful tool.
The problem is that death is the ultimate consequence.
Right.
And if your magic system negates the ultimate consequence without cost,
and not even the ultimate consequence, that's the ultimate sacrifice for the greater good or whatever.
Now, I will say I have seen this done well, but exactly once. And that is Martin's resurrection. Because the people come back in Martin's world with Beric Dondarrion, but they don't come back right.
See, I don't consider that resurrection. So in my my Dead Ned comic book that unfortunately the artist got cancer on, and so it's never been released, the main character dies in the first episode and then is resurrected, you know, but resurrection sucks because he's still dead and he still feels it, and he's literally just rotting, and he wants to do nothing but die. And so even though technically you could say, well, in that magic system you have resurrection, not really, because you don't want it to happen.
You know, spoilers for Feast for Crows if you haven't read the book, but Caitlin, Ned's wife, gets resurrected, but she still has her throat cut. She can't like talk. And I mean, wow, it was so well done.
Right. But like I said, I don't consider that resolution.
Yeah, but that is at huge costs. You know, it's not just like poof and you're back.
Right. And actually, going back to we had talked about reviewing this book series at the very beginning. We just never had time to do it. But Joel Rosenberg's Guardians of the Flame series, one of the main characters dies in that, and they take her back to the magic world to get her resurrected. And when they do, she's like, yeah, I've changed so much. I cannot be your friend anymore. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to do this. And she literally just extracts herself from it. And so there wasn't a cost to her, like she's just back and she's just normal, but there's a cost to everyone else because they lost her as a companion, as a friend, as a, you know, as a part of their party. And so I thought that was really well thought out and really well done to have a cost, even though she came back to life and she was fine, it still gave a cost.
James, no, they did resurrect James. They did resurrect James. And James was fine.
Oh, no, you're right. They resurrected James, and with her, they just fixed her mind.
Yes.
You're right.
But James's resurrection involved a personal sacrifice from every one of the other characters. And a commitment from them for a future payment.
You're right. I totally flubbed that. It's been a while. Like I said, we were going to reread it and then talk about it, and we just never have.
But Joel Rosenberg did write in a D&D style world. And I did find it very interesting that he actually did use magic in a very like industrial way as well. Look at things like his waste, his sewage waste disposal system and all that kind of thing. It was very well done.
And I've never made it a secret that probably is one of the things that was a big influence on me for creating the Genesis saga, the magic, because I always describe the magic in the Genesis world as carpentry magic until it isn't. Eventually it does morph into much more powerful magic. But for the first novel, and when you meet it, and like there's in the next podcast, we're actually going to talk about writing magic. So if you join us for the next podcast, you're going to see me reading this section. But like, I love this one joke where he burns a piece of paper and he's like, so could I use magic to turn the paper back into unburnt? And he's like, well, yeah, but why would you? Because it'd take like 5 hours. Like, you just walk down to the store and just buy another piece. Like, that's way easier than spending 5 hours to make this piece of paper not burnt. And so that's the limitation that I gave to that magic, is because like that coal box, one of the reasons why it takes so long is it takes 3 days to make a coal box. And so you have to have at least 2 mages passing off. Usually they'll have even more, but it has to be a continuous, unbroken, magical thing that takes 72 hours to make. And if I'm a mages guild and you're going to take 3 of my people to make this stupid coal box for you, you're going to pay. You can pay me some money. And so that's how, so really when you meet the mages in Genesis in the beginning, they're more like a construction team. Because like, oh, I can make that rope unbreakable. I can do this, I can do that. But it takes hours and hours and hours. You couldn't kill anybody with it. I mean, technically you could, but they'd have to stand there the whole time while you're doing it and allow you to do it.
My magic is extremely combat focused, but it's almost impossible to use outside of combat because you can't make items from it.
Well, and there's a different type of mage called a Tatsujin, which is all internal magic, and they are very violent and very, they just like yours, takes a lot of damage, increases their speed, increases their strength, increases their ability to see things, and so on and so forth. But it's all internal. They can't do anything external. And so the system still has it. I've just broken them. Actually, there's 3 halves to it, because there's the Masukai that can only affect external things like that, and then there's the Sulak, the Masulak, that can only affect other people on the inside. So they are nasty if they want to be, but really they're the healers of the world. But they can also rot your heart out. Again, it would take them about 6 hours in the beginning until the magic gets supercharged. But yeah, it's still the same thing. I divided it into 3 different areas. And that's a good segue to the third aspect that I always think about, which is weaknesses. So weaknesses I describe as ways that the story can take magic from the characters. So abilities are what the characters can do with magic. Limitations are what the characters cannot do with the magic, period, no matter what. Don't break those rules. And the weaknesses are, how can the story take magic away from the characters? Because again, if magic becomes too powerful, whatever. So like Harry Potter, like in the Chamber of Secrets, this is always the dumbest thing. So if you're a police officer and you bust into a house and there's a 10-year-old girl unconscious on the other side of the room, obviously what you do is you take your gun and put it on the ground and then run over to the girl to see if she's okay. Obviously, that's how you would do that. So obviously when Harry Potter sees Ginny laying there, he's obviously just going to set his magic wand down and then run across the room to see if she's okay. Because why wouldn't you do that? Anyway, that is the weakness of Harry Potter. You lose your wand, you lose your magic. It's that simple. Another weakness would be your voice. If you can't say things, you lose your magic.
Sanderson, of course, we spoke about Mistborn. If you don't have any metal, that's it. You don't have any metal. My mages are limited by their Elamar, which is their internal, like it's a well of power inside you that regenerates, but you've got what you've got.
It's not a weakness, that's a limitation. You can use it this much, and then you can't use it anymore until you recharge or whatever in D&D, until you read your spell book again because you've lost the magic, or pray to your god because you've lost the magic. That was always a part of D&D that I never really caught in too much. And then it comes to that fourth part that I don't use very often, which is cost. Cost is what the characters have to pay. So Voldemort can be immortal. He absolutely can. But you have to chop your own soul up into a bunch of different pieces, and you have to do horrible things to other people to gain that ability. Anakin Skywalker could gain the dark side of magic, but he had to slaughter a bunch of children to get there. That's his cost. Rand al'Thor in the Wheel of Time can save the world with magic, but he's going to go insane doing it. So he's got to basically put up his own. Huh?
He might go insane because Jordan threatens it, but you know.
Right. Yeah, I love joking about that because that's the other thing. If you're going to put a cost in that doesn't actually ever have a payoff, to me, and Wheel of Time is my favorite series, so I'm picking on it out of love. But the one thing that I didn't appreciate was the whole, because it's like a parent, and we've all seen this parent at the mall where it's like, I swear, Jeffrey, if you do that again, I'm going to spank you. Oh, you did it again. Oh, this is the last time, Jeffrey. One more time. Oh, you did it again. All right, you have pushed me to the limit. I'm going to spank you next time. Oh, you did it again. Doggone it, Jeffrey. I'm going to spank you the next. It's like, dear God, just spank that child. Like, they know you're not going to do it. You're just threatening. So Wheel of Time is kind of that way. It's like, ooh, Rand's going to use magic. He's going to go crazy. Next time he's going to go crazy. Oh, he used it again. But next time he's going to go crazy. And it's like, no, it isn't. Like, you're now just that threatens and never actually follows through.
You're actually just trolling us.
Well, and what I think he fell into the trap of is exactly why I don't use it. Because he has a cost that actually would ruin the story if he ever had to pay it.
What I did is you can overcome the limitation of the Elamar in my world. You can.
Okay.
But the overcome of the limitation of the Elamar is to take somebody else's Elamar, which kills them. So if you're willing to slaughter a whole bunch of people, you can absolutely overcome that limitation.
If you're willing to give up your soul, or it's also the cost of immortality for Voldemort. If you're willing to give up your soul and be a horrible person, which I don't, that's why when I get in a fight with my Star Wars friends that are like, oh no, you just don't understand. It's the main character is Darth Vader and he's the main hero. I'm like, no, he killed children. He is not a hero. As soon as you kill children, you're out. And so he paid that cost. He wanted the power. He paid the cost. He is a villain. He's a villain through and through, period. And so, yeah, that's the way I see it. If you're going to pay that cost, you're never going to be redeemed. So if you're going to slaughter a bunch of other people, maybe you can justify it to yourself that the ends justify the means, but that doesn't make you a hero. It just doesn't. No, I read a quote. I read a quote and I dug my butt off trying to figure out where this thing came from. So if anybody knows what, because it sounds like it came from a movie, but I spent probably 4 hours looking for the source of this quote. If anybody finds it, hit me up in the comments, shoot me an email, whatever. I would love to figure out where this came from. But it was a line that said, I'm not going to do it justice because I'm just doing it off of memory. This is about a month ago. But it was a line that said something like, I don't know why you like heroes. Villains are so much better. A hero will sacrifice you to save the world, but a villain will sacrifice the world to save you. It blew me away when I read it. It was just on a meme. Someone had sent it to me, or I saw it when I was scrolling some social media or whatever, and it stopped me dead in my tracks. And I literally stopped working for the next 4 hours trying to figure, like, it has to be from a movie. Who wrote this? Because I'm big on, if a writer can write something that brilliant, I want to read more of that writer. If they're a movie writer, I want to read more of their scripts. If they're a, whatever. And I could not find the source for that. But it literally sent chills up my spine. That's a great way to think about villains. So if anybody knows, let me know. I'm dying. But yeah, so costs are very, very difficult in my opinion. And you could say that the dead Ned, the cost is you want to die. The magic is it brought you back to life. And the cost is you are in agonizing pain for the rest of eternity unless you can figure out how to kill yourself. And you can't kill yourself. So that's what drives, it's a Cthulhu Western. And what drives it is the villain has been alive for like 400 years. His wife and children have died. His family has died. Everyone he's ever loved has died. And so he's figured out that if he brings the Cthulhu gods into our world, they will eat him and he'll be dead. Now, they'll also eat everyone else, but he doesn't give a crap about that. He gives a crap that he gets to die. And so and that's the sacrifice for Dead Ned. Nathaniel Boone is the main character. He also is in the same situation. He also wants to die. But does he sacrifice all of humanity for that end, or does he stop this villain who's trying to do it, knowing that it means that he will live for eternity suffering? And that's a sacrifice. That's why I loved the Dead Ned series, is because I thought it had a really awesome message.
I think, like, it's worth also mentioning here, like, Robert Jordan could have used his cost. If he had had a way for that cost to be paid without sending the character completely over the cliff, irredeemably so. So if your cost is something like they go mad, but they can be treated for it. It's painful, it carries over, you can only do it so many times, but you also can't threaten a cost and never levy it.
Technically, in Jordan's defense, he does kind of utilize it in an advantageous way. Because once the story gets so big that you stop being in Rand's head because he's doing all this stuff and you're only in the other characters' heads, they think he's gone crazy because he's doing some really, really, really insane things. Now, once you get back in Rand's head, you realize that he had figured out the actual prophecies and he finally got the key. And obviously we didn't want to be in his head because we wanted to live through the whole, oh, wow, he really has gone insane. So the story does benefit from it a little bit. But once you get back into Rand's head, you realize, oh, yeah, no, he didn't go insane. He's actually brilliant and just figured all this stuff out. And oh, look how Superman amazing he is. So, yeah, that was, if I have one dig about the Wheel of Time, it's that you added a cost and then you were just that annoying parent at the mall who constantly told your child that if they did it one more time, that there was going to be consequences. And yet they kept doing it. And you just kept saying there'll be consequences. And so that's my only real gripe about the Wheel of Time.
Don't be that annoying parent.
It just wasn't a cost that ever was capitalized upon. So those are the four, again, it's making sure that your magic system is there for the story, for the theme, making sure that you understand that it has to fit in with the world, it has to drive the world, it has to, to extrapolate through the world and become more than what it is, because people are going to use it in ways. You have to decide whether you're going to heavily define it or not define it at all, and then that will decide how much you can actually use it to solve conflicts within the plot. And then, I break it down to abilities, limitations, weaknesses, and costs, and use those four things to help me really design a magic system that is impactful to the story. I mean, that's really what it breaks down for me when I'm talking magic systems.
And I think that is a great way to end this episode. And we will see you soon for the next one.
Bye.